In this lesson, we'll begin using our isometric actions to create three-dimensional buildings. Alright, so in the previous lesson, we had finished working on the terrain, or, for the purpose of this course, we've finished working on the terrain. Now, we've also sort of established a style here to differentiate between paved areas and grassy areas, added a lake, some other things like that. Now, in between lessons, I've come in and recreated a few of these medians and grassy areas that are fairly narrow here, and we can zoom in and see those here. I've also placed one in the parking lot in front of this building right here. So, since we're working two-dimensionally, it's easiest to create as many details as you can two-dimensionally before using your isometric actions. This is an easy way to create any of the flat details before you have to consider that the isometric projection has been applied to the plane. So, I've gone ahead and created a few more small details, and I want to go and share those with you here. Let me go and just show you. I've created some sort of street markings here. Now, for this map, I've added just the dashed yellow line down the middle of each of these roads, and I've also added some crosswalks. Now, you may also notice here that I've tapered the road in a couple places, and that was according to the map. We talked about doing that earlier in this course. Basically, all I did was added an anchor point or two to these shapes, and then just nudged those anchor points down and tapered this road in. So, nothing fancy there. So, at this point, I think we're ready to go ahead and apply our isometric actions to our map and begin bringing buildings out of some of these footprints. Now, the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to unlock all of my layers, except for this reference layer here, so that I can draw a marquee selection around our map here and select all the different elements in that map. Now, it's definitely a good idea for you to go ahead and save a copy of your file at this point. I like to make sure I have a copy of my final flat map set aside so that I can always refer back to it if I ever need to. So I'm going to go ahead and open my Actions panel at this point. Let me go ahead and come up here to Window and Actions. And if you remember the Actions panel, we created these 4 actions. And I'm going to go ahead and use this top clockwise action here on this flat two-dimensional map. So I've saved that as, let me just close this out. I've saved that action as F6 on my keyboard. So I'm going to go ahead and hit F6. And you can see here that that action gets run, and we've basically turned this flat two-dimensional map into the top face of a cube. Let me just deselect this so we can see kind of the effect that this has had. Let me just zoom in here. You can see here that all of the elements that we've created for this map have been affected. Everything, even down to the street names, which are still type. We can always come back in and grab those street names, modify those just like they're type. So let's go ahead and zoom out here and start talking about creating some of these buildings. So oftentimes when an illustrator is working on, say, a technical drawing, or even a 3D modeler is creating a 3D model, they'll work from what's called an orthographic drawing. Now, an orthographic drawing is going to describe a subject from every possible angle that is going to be needed. So that's essentially what the easiest way to create these buildings is going to be. It's going to be to create orthographic drawings, or in this case, really, we're not going to need every single angle or every single side of these buildings detailed to us because we've already decided on our vantage point. We're viewing this from this angle right here. So for this building right here, for example, we don't need to know what this side looks like because we're not going to see that. So let's go ahead and come over here. And I tell you what, let me just zoom out a little bit and show you another layer here. And we'll walk through creating some orthographic drawings. We'll just go ahead and show this layer right here. And I tell you what, let's just take a look at, for example, these 2 buildings right here. Fairly simple buildings. We'll start with this this rectangular building here. And I've got here basically what that building looked like before we applied the action to this map. It was a rectangle, and it was taller than it was wide. So basically, again, remember, this is the footprint of this building, and this side and planes that sit on these sides are going to be what's visible to us after we apply our isometric top action. So let's go ahead and think about, okay, well, if we're going to look at this building and only see this side right here, what we're going to see is the elevation of that building and any details that are incorporated. We're going to see windows on this side of the building, and so on and so forth. So let's say that, again, this is the footprint of the building, and if that's the footprint, this is going to be that side that sits closest to us right here, for example. Say we're standing looking at that side, so we're going to see the elevation of that side. Let's go ahead and say that that's how tall that wall is. Now, if we were to walk around this building and look at this side right here, we're also going to need to know the information or the details about this side of the building. So let me just go ahead and make a copy of this holding Alt. I'm going to make that copy and drag it over here, and let's rotate that using our rotate tool. I've switched over to that with the keyboard shortcut R, and I'm going to hold Shift to rotate that at 45-degree angles. So we've created essentially this side right here, but this actually isn't wide enough. I'm just going to go ahead and use my smart guides, match that up here, and stretch that out to where it's the exact same width of this building here. So let me just rotate that again, and if we walked around that building and looked at this side right here, we're going to see this right here and any of the details on that wall that are contained there. So we've got all the information we need here. We've got the top of the building, or excuse me, rather the footprint of the building, and actually, to be honest, this is actually going to be the top of the building as well. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and run our actions on these. Let's go ahead and run our top action on this. We're using the F6 key. Let's go ahead and run our left action on this, since this is going to be now the left side right here, and I believe that was F5. And let's go ahead and run our right action on this plane right here, and that's, I believe, F8. Alright, so we've made all three of those visible planes for that very simple building here, and all that's left really to do is to snap these into position. So let me just zoom in on these, using my smart guides to line those up, and we'll snap those into position here. Just like so. Now, this is going to be the most tedious part of constructing a building like this, is just getting these walls placed in exactly the right spot. Sometimes the smart guides don't quite line up, and you'll be left with a little bitty white gap. So just be mindful that you're not relying too much on the smart guides. So we've got our building created here, and it's ready to drag over onto our map, but we need to go ahead and apply some color to it. So let me come over here, and I'm going to open up another swatch library here. Let's come back over to our nature subcategory, and let's choose this stone and brick. So we've got our stone and brick category here. Let me just drag that up, and let's go ahead and apply some colors. Let me just close that one out. Let's go ahead and grab this wall right here. And, you know, we're going to need to determine at this point where our light source is coming from. So if we want to say our light source is coming from this direction right here, obviously this wall right here is going to be more illuminated than this wall. So let's go ahead and maybe apply this color here. Let's apply maybe this color here. And let's go ahead and apply sort of a yellow top to that, or a brownish top to that, sort of like that. So we've got our first building. Now, no, that's a very simple building. There's not many details on that, but essentially, in building each of these separate planes, you can incorporate as many details as you want to into that plane, including a variety of different elevations. Maybe you're going to build a staircase that comes off and a door right here. Maybe you're going to build a recession here. Maybe there's a little guardrail around the edge of this roof. So, you know, you can add as many details as you want to. Orthographic drawings can get very, very detailed very quickly. So let me just grab this building. I'm going to group that together with a Control-G, and let's just drag that over onto our map, and we're going to drop it into position right over here. It should fit snugly right on top of the footprint we had for it. So, being that we just copied that shape over, and let's deselect that, undo and redo, and see, there we go. We'll get that snapped exactly into the right position. Now, you can see here we've created the first building on our three-dimensional map here. Now, orthographic drawings can get very, very complicated. And to be honest, that's really where most of your time should be spent if you're building a map like this, is building the orthographic pieces of each of your buildings. So let's come over here and take a look at this orthographic. Now, if you remember this building right here, let me just go ahead and copy that over and drag that shape over. It had a variety of different shapes going on. Now, keep in mind we've already applied our action to this shape, but this is what the original shape looked like. Now, what I've done here is I've broken down the different components of this building into elevations. So my thought process is that the darker shapes are further away from us if we're hovering above the building here, and the lighter shapes are closer to us. So the lighter the shape, the higher it goes. And you can see here I've broken that down essentially based on that. Now, I've actually broken this down into two additional views. So if we were to view this building from this side right here, this is what we would see. And you can see here this little piece that juts out. And likewise, if we were to view this from the right side, this is what we would see. So you can see here how orthographic drawings can get very, very complex very, very quickly. But, like I said, this is where most of your time should be spent. This is where all the details in your buildings and what really makes an interesting map is going to develop. So let me just come up here and show you one other orthographic drawing. And this is a highly detailed orthographic. And again, I'm only showing you two views here. We've got our top of our building, and we've got this side right here and this side. Now these are some actually some separate pieces that I had built to use on the roof itself. Let me just come over here and zoom in on the end result so I can show this to you. So you see those little pieces were actually for this little lip of the building. You see here there's a recession on the top of the building and there's a little pool at the top. So you can see a lot of little details in this, but you can break it down based on plane. That's the easiest way to do this. Break it down based on plane and think about this three-dimensionally. Think about if I was standing on this side of the building, then what would I see? If I was standing on that and saw everything that faced me, then I would see a plane here. I would see a plane a little further away from me here, and maybe a little plane here, and so on and so forth. And obviously several windows and a door. If I was to walk around the building, I would see something like this, a plane that's further away from me and a plane that's closer to me. So in taking these separate planes, we can actually group them by plane, being this is one group and this is one group, and then we can run the actions on those. So if we were to grab this one here and run our right plane action, you can see here we're going to end up with this plane just like so. And obviously we would need to run the action on this plane as well, but obviously these planes don't fit quite together, so we're going to run the action separately. Let me go ahead and run that action on this plane as well. Now these two planes right here are on the left, so let's go ahead and run the left action on these two groups of objects. Alright, so we've got the action run. Now essentially we can piece this building together. So we've got our different planes. Let me go ahead and grab this very thin plane, and we're going to snap that into position here. Grab this one, and we're going to snap it into position here. I'm doing this very quickly, so let's just grab this one and snap it in here. And then we would run our top action on this plane right here. F6. And you can see here how we've snapped that top plane into position. Now, obviously, this little piece right here was a part of that group, and I ran the action on this group of objects here as well as this little plane. But this actually would need to be moved back. This is supposed to be the wall of a little building that sits right there. And as you can see over here in this version right here, we've got a little building right here, maybe a pool supply house. So as you can see, orthographic drawings get very, very complex very, very quickly. And I tell you what, if you want, look in the project files. I'll include a separate file that has all the different orthographic drawings that I've used for the different buildings we've called out in the final version of this map. But I really want to spend one more lesson with you going through putting together some of these orthographic drawings and running actions on them, especially on a more complex building. So in the next lesson, we're going to continue on where we're leaving off here, and we're going to build a few more of these buildings based on orthographic drawings.